Sometimes on these TAKAGI Marco Ultra slit lamps, they get loose and they're moving around too much. And what's probably the issue is these things are loose. So if you pry up the cover, and look inside and to see if they're loose. Let me get a little closer. Over time, there's a couple Allens here and a Phillips screw here going up and down so often, and depending on how rough it was used, it can get loose in here. This one only happened to have one screw in it, so that was an issue. But even if this were tightened, it's still loose, even though this is tight. So this screw that's holding onto the shaft must be loose. So if it still wobbles when these things are tight, then it could be that because it had gotten loose, then the key is not lining up in the keyway on here correctly, and so that needs to be corrected. On this bearing assembly, there's a little notch right there, and on the top of this lift arm, on the bottom of this lift arm, there's a little tab, like a little key, and that fits right into this little notch. And if this has gotten loose in time, then it's possible that this might have gotten out of alignment, or the little tab, the little key, has gotten messed up so it's not fitting inside there very well. So we're going to take it off and look at it, examine it a little more closely. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and take everything off here. Microscope arm off. To get some weight off of it. And I'm going to go ahead and take this screw all the way out. Another thing that might be an issue, this little washer has a notch in it also. There should be two screws in here. This has a notch, and there are times when this, because it was loose, it kept moving, and this is widened out. So even though it's back on there, it's too loose. There's too much play. So that might be an issue too, is to see how much play your little key has going in there. This one is okay. There's not a lot of play in it, so this is not the issue, but sometimes it is. And you could either hit it with your hammer to bend it, or get some pliers and kind of squeeze it just enough to fit on here. It doesn't have to fit completely snug. There can be a little bit of wiggle room, but just a little bit. Enough to to go on and off easily. That's all you'd need. If it's on there and it's wobbly, that's going to put too much play in there. So we're going to take this off, but you need to be a little careful because that spring is going to come up. Now underneath here, you have a 6mm screw, and it's fairly short, and you only have one flat washer. This has kind of gotten concave because it's been tightened on there. So I'm going to lift it up. It's going to spring. This is a pretty dry spring. I would probably put some grease on it before I put it back. But under here, this is the key, the little key that fits in to this notch here. That notch. Everything has to fit nice and tight. So if this has gotten loose over time and somehow this has turned a little bit and messed up your little key here, then it may not fit back in there, and even though you tighten it up, it's not fitting. So I'm going to lower this down all the way. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put something underneath here to keep this up in the air so I can dry fit it without the spring in it to see if my notch is fitting in there. So I'm going to put a little 2x4 underneath the front of it, and under here I'm just going to stick this little screwdriver or Phillips or whatever in here to keep that shaft from up in the air. Now it's not going to go down on me. And I can dry fit this without the spring in it. This lift arm. To see how well it fits. Now if you're wondering if it's going down all the way, it's not going to go all the way flush, but it should come up through this hole. So one way you can tell if it's really going in is go ahead and turn it out of the way so it doesn't fit, and then observe how low it fits and look at the gap and see how high it is, and then move it back into position that it's supposed to go, and fit your lift arm back in and see if it went down lower. If it did, then it's fitting in like it should. But chances are, if it's gotten loose, it's gotten off track, and evidence that it's gotten off track is it's been rubbing. If you see rubbing anywhere around here, it's because things are not lined up. It's been rubbing here because this has not been, it's either been loose or it hasn't fit inside the track like it's supposed to, into the keyway. So what you may have to do to clean up this keyway so it will fit is here's a file, and it's got the front of it is flat, and what you could do is just keep filing the edges, the two sides, and cleaning up that key so that it will fit in here. It will fit in the notch. By looking at it, you can tell if it's been widened by being in the wrong position, and you may have to clean up this keyway a little bit. If it had gotten messed up a little, clean this keyway out, just the edges, the top edges. That's probably what may have gotten damaged, and you may have to go back and forth multiple times to clean that keyway, that little key up, so it will fit when the spring is not in it. That's going to help us the most. When you line it up, straight, lost my helper. Also, you might want to see if this is cleaned up. This might be boogered up too, and you may have to get a round file and clean this surface up, because it's going to go around this lip. And when it looks like it's gone down, it may not be, it probably won't be totally flush, because this is thicker than the little key. So it's not going to go down. When this falls into place, it's not going to go down as much, as thick as the thickness here. So it's not going to be totally flush, but it's going to be close. And then when it looks like you've gotten it well, make sure your key is going to fit back into here, and put everything back together and see if that helps. One other thing was probably important is it got loose because it's just a short screw, 6 millimeter, and all they have is a flat washer. So what you might want to do is get a little bit longer screw and put on a lock washer besides their flat washer, and that will help to keep it tight instead of just the flat washer. Some people have put on Loctite on the threads, but if you don't put a lock washer on there, even that can get loose. And then when you go to try to tighten it, it feels tight, but it's merely because the threads are clogged with the Loctite. So I'm not going to put any on. I'm going to use a longer screw with a lock washer onto there, and I'm going to put it all back together. I'm going to put a little Seal Glide grease on this spring, put it back together. But this happens pretty often with these TAKAGI Marco Ultra slit lamps. So you'll probably run up against it. Why it's wobbly and it's not tight like it was when it was new. And that might help you out.